First of all, this is the first talk I'm giving of this type, so just bear with me for a second. I've titled this talk 1,000 Stories for 1,000 Heroes, and it's well, designing player-centric narrative in Baldur's Gate 3. So this will be just an overview, some high-level approach that we do when creating content, especially what we will call situations in the game. So, okay, who am I? I'm Guxens. I started my career in video games coming from indie games. So I have been wearing many hats when I was working in indie with our teams, just co-directing games called Pizza Situation, right? We were also working on narrative, the very heavily narrative games before. I also handled some of the programming, some of the art direction, right? Working with the teams, outsourcing all of the business side marketing. So in the end, an indie, you will all understand, you end up wearing many hats, and this gives you a much better understanding of how to handle full pieces of content from the beginning till the end. And this was very relevant because then later I joined at Larian as RPG designer. I'm currently senior RPG designer here, and what an RPG designer does at Larian is we own certain parts of the game. We own certain parts of content, usually our regions, what we call them, right? So from there, we develop the regions from the very beginning, so developing the stories, the narrative, like what's going on there. And we work together with all the teams just to bring this to reality, to put it into the game, and to just follow through, you know, because things never go from paper to game untouched. We end up changing a lot of things. We have a very iterative process. So in the end, our job is to ensure that the final region is actually fun. It's something you can play with and engage with. So more specifically, in Baldur's Gate 3, I was working on the Githyanki Crash and Rosemont Monastery region. I was also working on a transition region that you will find later in the game that happens in the astral plane, and also a lot of parts from the lower city. So okay, before we start, I just want to give a shout out to the team, because like at Larian, our process is very collaborative. So we really cannot take credit for any single part of it, because everyone who has touched a piece of the game has put their creativity into it, has put their ownership into it. So it's really only possible because the full team is there. It's not really one person behind it telling it all. It's really a collaboration. And also mild spoilers. So I know a lot of you haven't played through the game. The game's very long. So I've kept all spoilers in the game that you'll find today to Act 1. So everything you will see today will only be for Act 1. All right. So whenever I talk about narrative design with friends and people, peers in the industry, right, we realize that narrative is used in a lot of ways to describe many different tasks and roles within game design. So I'm just clarifying a bit what I mean when I talk about narrative design, specifically at Larian. So this is, in a very simplified view, we have three sort of parts that we divided on, right? We have the high-level story. What does this mean? This means, what is the game about, right? What's happening to me as a player? So we know in Baldur's Gate 3, you are kidnapped by some mind flayers, you have a tadpole in your eye, and you need to get rid of it. That's the main story, right? High-level story will be how you continue your adventure, the areas that you will find, and the sort of villains also you'll find in the game. So it's basically this full story from the beginning of end that we're telling. This high-level story also applies for companions, for example. So it's the story of the companion, right? Who are they? What's their conflict, right? What will they become in the future? What can the player change them into? So all of this I would put together into this high-level story. Then we also have playable moments. So we take moments from this high-level story and we turn them into playable moments because it's a video game. So the story will not just be told to you in a linear manner. You will experience it by interacting with elements in the world, with people, and within these areas that you have been visiting, right? So for example, if you say a companion, we know Astarion's a vampire. All right, so that's a high-level story. How do we tell this story? Through a playable moment, right? So we have a bite scene. OK, he's trying to bite you, and that's how you find out. So that would be an example of how we turn this high-level story into playable moments, right? And then there's also the actual text, right? All the dialogue trees, the branching, all the lines that all the characters will talk to you, all the books, right? So all of this could be under the narrative umbrella. But what I'll be focusing today is just the playable moments. So how we turn those high-level story into playable moments that you can interact with and have fun with. All right. So let me see some hands. Who here has played D&D before? A campaign? OK, quite a lot of you. And mastered? All right, not so many. More if you need to turn into masters. But yeah. So you will realize when you're playing D&D, you expect players to visit a new area, right? And when you visit this new area, you need to be prepared because players are going to start asking a lot of questions, right? So what's going on there? Who can I meet? Who's there in this tavern, right? What can I find? What can I do? So you need to have all of this prepared. But in tabletop, you can have an element of improvisation, right? If you don't prepare this, then that's fine. I'll just make this up. This is Jim, the goblin in the tavern. Sure, they will not get attached to him. But yeah, in video games, we have to have all of this planned already. We have to be ready to react to any of these questions that players might have, right? So we call situations these playable moments, and it's the part where we break down all this high-level story into these smaller set pieces, and we have to, of course, have all the characters planned. We need to understand who they are, what their conflicts are. So that's why we call them situations, not necessarily a quest. Right? Because when we think about games, maybe more traditionally, you think about, oh, what are the quests that I can have? We approach it a bit differently. We approach it as it's just something that happens where you can have an impact, right? Where you can get involved with, and you can have some impact by your involvement. And you here is very important, because any situation will just fall apart if it doesn't include the player in them, because then it will just it will be immediately discarded. It will not be fun or engaging, because we are doing very player-centric narrative design. So we need to leave this hole for the player to step in and fill. So I've divided the situations approach that we do a bit into hook, a development, and outcomes. This is not really something that we do formally. It's just a way to communicate a bit of what we focus on when designing all these situations. The hook, as you will see, is it's just the way for players to catch the player's interest in an interesting manner. Development will be about how we engage with the situation, how we move it forward. So what can we do to advance this plot, this story? And outcomes, in the end, is just, how have I affected this? And how has the world changed because of my involvement, right? So the hook. To create a good hook, you really need to ask, why do I care? Like, this is the golden question. If you don't care about what's being presented to you, then there will be no quest following through, right? There will be no situation. So yeah, what we focus on the most when creating hooks is about the emotion. We create hooks that create an emotion from you. So we want to engage more of the heart rather than the brain, right? A lot of more easy ways to design quests is just to engage the brain with it. I'm asking a task from you, and you just fulfill it, you get a reward. So this is something that can be automated. Your brain just checks out. You don't care anymore. You're just into this Skinner box loop. We try to bring you forward, right? Make you present here, make you care about what you're doing. So that's why we try to engage a bit more the heart rather than the brain, I would say. So yeah, it's not a task, but it's rather a question, right? There's this situation, there's this happening here. What do you want to do about it, right? So it's a lot more open-ended. We let you choose how you step in. So the way we design situations is a bit like this. There's this, what I call the player hole of possibility. There's this empty space. There's actually a stage. It's just this empty area that you can see yourself playing a role with, right? So you encounter a situation, and there's this hole of possibility that you can envision yourself. It's almost like a promise, right? If you can expect yourself to come in and do something that will affect this outcome, then we need to deliver this promise. So this is a bit what we're looking for. We're looking for this gap that you can step in and fill. So what are the kind of hooks that we seek? We seek hooks that are personal, right? We look for things that are personal because those are the ones that you will care the most about. So it's something that affects you, or maybe that affects someone around you. So for example, it's about gaining or losing power, right? So we care about our character build. Maybe if we gain some buffs, we lose some buffs. We expect to get some powerful equipment. Those are hooks that will get your attention, most likely. But not necessarily, right? It's also about your relationships. How your relationship with this character in town might change, or how your relationship with your companions might change as well, right? It's also about the person you'll become, because don't forget we're playing a role-playing game. The role here is very important. Your fantasy needs to be fulfilled, right? So if it's something that you can clearly see yourself reflecting your role in, that will also be enticing. So for example here, this goblin is Saza. When we arrive in Act 1, there we see some goblins attacking the den of druids, and Saza has been captured. So when you arrive here, there's one of the tieflings about to execute her. And then you see your call of possibility, right? Should I step in? Should I become the hero that saves her? Or maybe should I be the judge to judge her crimes, right? Or maybe I should just be the executioner, just kill her because she's a goblin, right? And then there's another layer, which is that, of course, you have the tadpole, and you're trying to find out what the hell's going on with it, how do I get rid of it? And Saza here might have some information. She knows something that you don't know about this tadpole. So there's another layer of interest, right? Do I step in to save her, but not because I'm a hero, just because I'm interested and I want to know what's going on with my tadpole? So this is, for example, one of the hooks that we would be looking for. Another one of the things that we seek when creating hooks is that we like to give player agency in their pursuit of these hooks, right? Kelsey, in their Outer Wilds talk, mentioned about pulling versus pushing information to players. It's a very great talk. I recommend you all to check it out. But this is a bit what we're doing as well, right? We're not shoving information in front of players. We try as much as possible to create these breadcrumbs of interest, right? That then you can choose when to engage with and when to follow. So yeah, we try to build up all the interest and let you choose your time to engage. For example, here in the Underdark, when you explore, you start seeing some statues. And when you approach, you start seeing they are actually petrified people in poses of despair and anguish. So you start wondering, what's going on here? Is there a big danger that I want to leave, so I don't want to engage with this? Maybe there were some treasures in here that they were protecting. So you start getting interested in the area, and you choose whether you want to engage or not, right? And this is also one of the ways that we can create hooks and give you some agency. And there's also this space of possibility to roleplay, right? Am I a coward? Am I a hero? Do I want to step in and depetrify them to save them? So, yeah, more examples in Baldur's Gate 3 of hooks and how we create them. For example, there is in the Druid Grove, you can have your belongings stolen by children. So how do you react to it? It's personal because they've stolen something from you, but they're also kids in need. So how you choose to play this role will define your character a lot, right? There's also these two men harassing an old woman, but there's something fishy going on as well. There's also a song being heard in the distance, and you see a kid that's maybe too close to the water. And there's these goblins attacking this one village where you hope to find your cure to the tadpole, right? Maybe it's just some blueprints that you find from old lost weapons that you can forge and grow in power. It's maybe one of the tortured adventurers who is part of a group that you met before, but also he's holding valuable information of a powerful relic. So all of these are hooks that have some personal interest in it or have some big roleplay possibility. Okay, let's try to make one hook, now that we learned a bit how we do that. Okay, let's say I go to town, I meet Jim, this is Jim. This is an alchemist, and they tell me, hey man, I need 3 roses to create this potion, and I'm really running low. Can you go find 3 roses for me? And I'll say, sure, just give me 50 gold. Okay, what do I feel here? I don't feel anything really, I'm just doing what I'm asked. What are my personal stakes? I guess if I'm really low on money and I really need the 50 gold, maybe that will make a difference, but I don't feel too strongly here. What agency do I have in the discovery? Well, he just told me, I guess. And what does this do to define my character? Well, I guess it just makes me, am I a good person because I said yes? Am I just someone who cannot say no? Am I just self-interest and that desperate to have 50 gold? So there's not a lot of possibility here to project myself into. So, of course, if I show this to the director, it will go into the bin. Okay, let's try a new one. Let's say this is Sam. Sam's a very likable person in town, very nice, cheery person, but you discover that they are sick and that they might eventually die from this sickness. So I care about Sam, I like them. So, of course, I will start looking for ways of healing them. Maybe I can talk to the healer in town. Maybe I can go to the library and look at that. I found a book that tells me, oh, if you get these 3 roses and make a potion out of it, you can cure this sickness. So, okay, what do I feel here? I feel a lot of empathy for this person, and I feel like I want to help them. Or maybe quite the opposite, right? Maybe I don't care, I'm a bastard, and I want to leave them as is. But it is my choice to leave them sick as well, right? What are my personal stakes? Well, I will lose a friend. I will lose a friend. Maybe we can up these stakes, right? Maybe this person is someone who one of their companions cares a lot about, so this companion's story might be affected by this person's fate. What agency do I have in the discovery? So in here, it's my choice to pursue this information. It was me who was looking for these books, this information about, OK, I need to get these 3 roses, and I need to get this healing potion to heal them. So there was a lot of space for me to pursue this and just follow on the breadcrumbs. And how does this define my character? Well, I'm a hero if I save them, right? Or I'm a good friend. Or I'm a bastard if I just let them be. So there's a lot more of possibility in here to roleplay. All right, so now that we know how to make hooks, how do we pursue the development? So here the question is, what can I do? Right? So we project ourselves into this empty space of possibility, and we start getting expectations. OK, how do I approach this? What can I do? OK, I'll bring my book back up again. A lot of us have this idea that, yet we put our passion into the game. We want the players to have the best, most beautiful experience, nothing but the best for our children. But this is what's actually fun, right? You want to go out and play. You want to get messy. You want to have the freedom to just fuck up, mess around. So this is what we need to keep in mind. This is the mindset that we have a bit when designing all this development, right? We don't want the perfection. We want the fun. So yeah, narrative is not only about the dialogues, it's about the gameplay as well. So in our games, we give players the tools through very strong gameplay systems. And we let them be creative with all of them, right? With how they engage with the story. Because this realm of possibility is what will allow you to express yourself. So the story is not only being told with all these set moments. The story is every moment that you're playing, everything you're doing in the game is building up your story, is telling what you do, what your character will develop into, right? So these are some examples of what gameplay systems we use to tell our stories as well. So it can be the skills. We use them a lot, right? For the dice rolls, those are elements that we use to tell the stories. There's also spells like Speak with Animals, for example, right? Or spells like Speak with Dead. It's also spells like Remove Curse or Become Invisible, right? All of these elements will become part of the story that you will be telling about how you infiltrated this place because you were invisible, or how you found out this information because you spoke with this corpse on the side, right? It's also about this, just be very creative because it's there for a reason. So we have the philosophy of saying yes rather than saying no, right? So yeah, strong systems will allow us to create very strong stories via gameplay. And that's why the narrative always needs to work together with the systems and say yes, right? So if you think back to the boxes, if there's a very big wall, a player creates a stack of boxes to go over, we say yes, right? We don't build a bigger wall to block them off. Quite the opposite. We want to reward them, like, you were so creative, that was a lot of fun. OK, well done, right? But yeah, also keep in mind that it needs to be consistent, right? So for all of the systems to play out well with the story as well, they need to keep working in the same way throughout the full game, right? So if we have a cursed person, and you cast Remove Curse, and the curse is gone for them, and this moves forward the story, this also needs to apply later if we find another cursed person from whatever other reason. And because if you go to that second person and you use the same spell and it doesn't work, it doesn't feel good. It's very frustrating, right? Things need to make sense. So in narrative, we create we take into account of the systems and create the story that makes sense. All right, so how do we add all of this without going crazy and getting lost in the details? So yeah, we start with a very core golden path, that we call it. There's just the very basic bones of what this interaction will be about, right? So if we go back to Sam, who was sick and needed some medicine to get better, the golden path would be, OK, I go find the roses, I get the potion, and I give it to them, right? OK, that's one permutation, but what other main permutations do I make out of it? Maybe I pick poisonous plants and make another potion out of it, and I kill them. OK, those are the two big permutations, right? OK, how do we build up from here? So we put it into the game, we test it. If it's not good, then we just scratch it. It's not fun. once it's fun, once the very bones of it are fun and interesting, we start adding layers onto it, right? So we start adding all these gameplay layers about, okay, what if, right? What else can I do? Can I cast, lesser restoration? Does this heal them? Okay, yes, it's valid, right? Let's use this, right? Or let's create other conditions of it. Let's add crimes. Let's say I have the potion, I give it to them, but then someone else, because I'm in multiplayer, they steal it from their pocket right before they drink it. Okay, what do we do, right? So we need to account for all of this. There's also reactivity, right? Because maybe I'm a cleric, so I expect to have a lot more knowledge out of it, right? Or maybe I have very high medicine stats. Maybe just myself I can manage to cure them without going through the hurdle of getting a potion. So we start, because we know all our systems in the game, right? We know what we can do. So we start accounting for all of this. We start, making a list of all the things that we can do and start prioritizing what is the most impactful. What are the things that make the most sense, right? And yeah, in the end, we are the ones who are playing the game as well. So all of us will just be playing and saying like, hey, what about? Because I really wanted to do this here and I couldn't. So we talk it out and they say like, hell yeah, okay, let's try to support it, right? As much as we can, we're coming up with all the possibilities and accounting for all of them. But yeah, some examples, right, in Baldur's Gate 3 of how this development might happen. So there's a goblin camp, Sasa, right, remember? So we can go into this goblin camp many ways, right? There's the main door, sure, like maybe I want to side with the goblins, and I go through this main door, but they will be suspicious, right? So maybe I can use my powers that the tadpole gives me to prove I'm one of them. Or maybe it just happens that I'm a drow, and their commander's a drow, so they will respect me a lot more, right? It's a lot easier for me to get in. But how about I want to just like stealth and snipe those goblin leaders from the sidelines? Okay, if you explore the area, you'll find out that there's also a weak wall above, and that gives you another way into the whole goblin camp, right? Yeah, you can go into the upper layers of the building and start sniping things from stealth. That's also part of your roleplay, right? Okay, let's say quite the opposite. Maybe I want to side with them. Maybe I freed Sasa. I said like, okay, let me help you, and I want to actually join those goblins, right? So we try to account for all these major roleplay possibilities that you might want to have. Okay, so we have developed a strong hook. We have created a strong, free development, and in the end, of course, we expect outcomes, right? So the outcomes are the most straightforward part. Have I changed the world? Because in a player-centric narrative, it's very important that all my actions change what's going to happen. So yeah, if the world is not affected by what I've done, then what the hell did I do, right? So this is very important. It's quite straightforward because in the end, when you were creating a hook, you were creating these expectations, right? This empty stage for you to step in and play a role. So the outcomes need to deliver on this fantasy of this role, right? In the expectations of what was promised in this hook. So yeah, outcomes can have many shapes, right? It's not just the rewards, but yeah, it can be rewards, but it can also be the discovery of something new, right? The loss of something known, maybe a new state in an area. Just remember that good outcomes don't necessarily mean positive. They need to be satisfying. They need to deliver on this promise that was made. But yeah, outcomes can be changes in my power, right? Did I get that buff that I was expecting, that I was hoping to? Did I get that cool weapon that I found the blueprints for? But yeah, it can also mean, did my companion change because of something I did? Because it just made them grow as a person? Did Sam get the healing potion and live in the end? But yeah, what's most important, again, is that it delivers on the promise that was made in the beginning. So we have the empty space of possibility here, again, and we have Halsin, we have Minthara. So all this, what Halsin and Minthara embody in the end, they embody the confirmation of the roleplay that you were going through, right? If you were a heroic person, the story continues in a way that acknowledges your heroicness, and it continues building up this in the form of this companion Halsin, right? And quite the opposite. If you were a bastard in this way, these companions that you will keep finding, right? Like Minthara, she embodies this other aspect that you can be as well. But it doesn't necessarily lock you in and make you continue. So that's another thing. We let you choose your roleplay anywhere in time. You may change your character. You may start more heroic. You may become a lot more redeemable later, right? So we don't lock you into a certain path. We always keep this free space of possibility to express yourself, so you can yourself build your own story as you want. Yeah, in the end, just remember that to create hooks, they need to matter. Make it personal, make me care. Create development that has a lot of freedom. Let people be messy, let people have fun, be wild. And yeah, create outcomes that change the world, that really affected something. Because if they didn't affect the world, then it doesn't build up to anything. That's pretty much the overview. Thank you very much. So I wanted to leave 15 minutes of questions or so, if anyone has them. Yep.
Hi. Thank you for the talk. It was amazing. Previously you were talking about this golden path and how you will have like a core story and then add layers of different gameplay elements and systems that you know that are already in place. What happens when there are actually stories of this type being development at the same time that new systems are being implemented? It's like you get like a Slack notification, like you have to check all these stories, and how does it work?
Yeah, I see Roland here was laughing already. Yeah, it's complicated because it will never be as orderly as I present, right? Things will get added much later in the game. We still account for them. So of course, communication is vital, right? If systems added something new and we don't know about it, then it won't have these repercussions, right? So we keep in constant communication to make sure that we can implement them. But yeah, it can happen late, and then we can just come in and adjust what's needed. It's a lot of more work. It's hard. Maybe we need to be creative, right, in the way that we account for it, because maybe we don't have any more voice lines. Maybe we don't have any of the higher support that we need. But still, yes, we just go back. We check, okay, how does this affect my situations, right? And how do we implement this new feature? Like you can see this in Baldur's Gate 3, for example, in early access, right? With all the patches, there was like new class. This new class had reactivity, right? But all those dialogues were done. So we go back to these dialogues and say, like, okay, where does it make sense that this class has something to say about, right? So we just go back and start like building up all the reactivity for this one class. So yeah, we go back. It might be a bit messy. It's not as orderly as we would like, but we still make sure that we can deliver.
Well, thanks for the talk, and congrats on the release and all the awards and stuff, well deserved. So how do you guys deal with all this mentality of saying yes to the player? Let's say that to solve another problem, they destroy Jim's house. So yeah, now you will not have the quest to cure them from the illness or whatever. Do you guys have a fallback path, or do you guys like have any kind of strategy to be able to deal with situations like this in which the player fucks up another storyline?
Yeah, we have what we call is like M+1 design. Like, okay, if I mess up everything, if I go and find the flowers but I just destroyed them, I ate them for some reason, and then I go back and I discover like, oh shit, I needed those flowers for this guy. So we have M+1 design. That means that we always add like an accessible fallback. Right? Unless we consciously, it's something that we consciously want you to experience the consequences of your actions, right? But in this case, we build up a bit more the knowledge and the expectations, right? It doesn't come as a surprise. But yeah, usually we have M+1 design, which means that we have so many fallbacks for the things that we need. So for main story, Shadowheart is the great example, right? You need this astral prism to survive. So there are so many fallbacks for Shadowheart to come. If you realize, if you ignore Shadowheart early on in the beach, then she will be at the Druid Grove playing with the artifact. If you continue going there, she will come up at Goblin Camp, and there's Shadowheart, I think, is the one that has the most fallbacks, because she's giving you the one thing that's key to everything, right? So yeah, we always keep M+1 design, and you'll notice maybe some of the bigger story moments that we want to deliver are maybe happen on long rest, right? There's camp nights that happen between acts as well. So we make sure that at least we can deliver the core story points, and at least there's one accessible way that you can deal with things.
Hi, good morning. What is one thing during development that you felt could have gone better, and how would you have done it differently if you could do it again?
Oh man, there's so many. It's very hard. Did you say as feature?
Sorry?
Did you say as feature?
So something like a personal, a memorable anecdote that you feel that while you were developing was like, oh, I could have done this better.
Personally, I have this tiny bit that, for example, if you go to the monastery in Crash, there's some kobolds. I really wanted them to talk and to have like something more going on there, but in the end, we decided to fall back down to this exploration, this dungeoning that you have going on there. Because when you get into the Crash, there's a lot more like heavy story development. So we wanted to give this a lot more buffer space to gameplay. But still, I really wanted to have those little goblins, a little kobold stock, for example. But that's more on the personal matter. And yeah, there's a lot of decisions that we make that are for the best of the game, right? For the pacing. So yeah, I guess that would be one of them.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you for the talk. When designing the quests, by what you've presented, I'm guessing that you've been following a rational game design approach in which you have the different systems and you can build a quest with any mix of these systems working together. So when you started designing it, did you have a rigid amount of systems that you could use? Or as you were designing the quests, there was an idea that you might need a new system to be created and you had the opportunity to discuss that with producers and implement that in the game? How flexible was in development that?
Yeah, so because we're Baldur's Gate 3 is actually it's D&D, right? So we need to use the systems that are provided by the D&D rule set. Of course, we have our adaptation, right, to make them more friendly into video game realm. We don't have any like checkbox of systems like that we go through, like we must include everything. Of course, in the end, we cover at least the basic reactivity, but it's not like a must that it must be like a major part of a story, right? We cover that they are acknowledged with, but the importance in the story is just about how much impact they will have in the player game. We don't usually create new systems because we already have a lot to go through, really, and it's a very the strength of them is about how they interact with each other, and the consistency that they have. So if we were to introduce something new, we always need to think of, okay, how much impact will it have throughout the full game, right? Because it needs to happen everywhere. So we try to be mindful. There might be, maybe some new surface that you use, but it makes sense to use in this one context, right? And if we include it somewhere else, it needs to make sense there as well. So yeah, we still introduce some few new systems, but it's very limited because simple is better, right? You understand the core rules and you try to be creative with the tools that you have rather than just adding new tools and new tools and new tools. I guess that's about it.
Thank you.
Hello, good morning. So you have a really big game. Hello. Hello. So you have a really big game with so many options, and you have a really big team. How do you deal with overscoping?
I mean, we iterate a lot already on paper design, and we start having a good idea. Like once you get working into it a bit, you start getting a good idea of like how much work will something be, and how much of it do you need in a region, right, to make the region like long enough, satisfying. So you start getting an idea, okay, like this situation might be 3 hours maybe, and we'll need like this many resources. It will be maybe a couple months to do. It's a lot of experience from the producers, from the director, from ourselves. In the end, because again, we know the kinds of systems that we do. We have our internal tools as well. We know how long, like how complicated things are to do in game, to implement or not. So it's just experience, right? We end up learning, and also because things are not happening, from one day to the other, right? So maybe we just start working on thing and we see it's scope creep, creeping in. So we just simplify this situation, or just cut options, cut branches, just to make sure it happens, rather than it just becomes overbearing and we just cannot do anything at all, right? Or it's not good enough. So during the process of building it up, we already see like where it's growing and kind of trim the edges, I guess that's about it.
Thank you.
I was wondering, first of all, congrats on winning Game of the Year.
Thank you.
And I was wondering, how much time does it take to develop a whole region? I mean, years. Well, the complex of the game, I'm imagining it has to be a lot of time.
It depends so much on the scope of the region, because one region is not like the other. There's very big regions, very small regions. It depends on how many situations are inside the region, for example. It depends on how big is your team, right, working on this region. But yeah, I would say the more situations you have, the longer it will be, because they also need to work together. So there's one thing, just establishing the basis of it, but the other thing is just like hardening, making sure that all of them are cohesive and like can stand up by themselves. So there's a lot of like hardening time that goes after all the bases are done. It's long, but it's not like a set time, right? It depends so much on the content. So of course, more content, more time.
So, hi, here. Hey. So, first of all, thank you for the talk. Thank you for the game. And a friend of mine from my party, from Baldur's Gate party, told you that he need a T-shirt that says, estuve en el Creche Git Yankee y solo conseguí una estúpida maza. So that's an idea.
Tell this to this man here.
Yeah. So how do you deal internally, and if you deal with, and if you look for extreme cases, like how do you test, and if you look for those extreme cases, extreme scenarios in some parts of the gameplay, and where do you put the limit? Like, okay, the player can do all of these things, and if they are really, really crazy, then they also can do this, but we don't think that they are going to do these kind of things. And they, of course, they do it in Twitter, and they upload a video. So how do you deal, and how do you look for, if you look for those cases when you test the game?
I mean, yeah, this is a very, very question for scripters. Roland here can answer this a lot better than I. But yeah, we know the usual offenders, right? When you worked on this long enough, you know the usual offenders that are like, stealing things from pockets, shoving people while they're talking, making people invisible, turning them into sheep. So you start knowing all the usual offenders, so you cover them right away. But then there's also things that you suddenly realize much later, and you're like, oh, damn, there's this one thing, god damn it. So we try to see, like, okay, how much of it does it impact in the situation? Does it break everything and make it unfun? Because that's the thing, does this make it fun, or does it make it unfun, right? If it makes it fun, it's something that we can live with, right? It's your creativity, you found a workaround, it's extreme, and it's like, good for you. But also, if it doesn't make it fun, if it just breaks the situation, if it makes you feel frustrated because you were trying to be smart and creative, and then suddenly it doesn't work anymore, that's the thing that we want to fix, right? So we try to account. We're the ones playing the game all the time ourselves. We have a wonderful team of QA also finding things, our playtesters. The game's going through many hands already, just calling out all these things that we can do. Of course, there's millions of interactions possible, so we will miss some, but we'll also pay attention to those that are not fun and can break things, just to fix them up, maybe patch them, and try to cover the biggest impact, right?
Thanks.
Antonio?
De hecho, tendríamos tiempo para una última pregunta.
Okay.
Si queréis. Aquí, venga. Lo siento, Ana.
Hi. My last question was, in a game with so much player agency, how do you make sure to call the player's attention and kind of quote unquote guide them through the process without being over too monotonous? Like, how do you make sure that you kind of, because you have points in the game where you want players to act a certain way, like following the main story. How do you make sure to control the player without them really knowing?
So it's not about control, it's again about the hooks, right? Mm-hmm. So we create hooks that will attract certain kind of roleplay, maybe, or will attract certain kinds of players. So, is there someone who's really into exploration? We place some hooks that are exploration-driven, right? And you will go there. Someone really cares about characters. We create some hooks that affect the characters. So something like Moonrise Towers is called out very early in Act 1 as well, right? And in Act 2 throughout. All the stories that you end up engaging with eventually will lead you to Moonrise Towers, right? But it's not the one thing that we, the one moment where we tell you, like, go there. There's all these many possibilities and reasons that you can go there, and you will go there because you have to for one reason or another. It's in the end, again, we leave the roleplay possibility there, and we just create the hooks that will attract certain kinds of roleplay. So the more important it is for main story, the more hooks that we try to place.
Ahora sí que sí, no tenemos tiempo para más. Muchísimas gracias. Un aplauso para Anna Guxens.